So, we're back, and this is part 2 of the ransom collection problem. How to pick up money if you kidnap somebody without getting caught. And because it's part 2, I've got your suggestions, your ideas of how to collect the money. And, of course, I'll give you the history, what I did. About a week ago, I guess, perhaps less, I don't know when I'll do this, I put the question to viewers, how would you pick up ransom money? This was over the opportunity I had, or the threat perhaps, of suggesting ways of picking up the money for a group of friends in Lebanon. We'd met in June in Lebanon, and they'd planned to kidnap Rupert Murdoch's son, Lachlan. The ask was $15 million, and they wanted a way of picking up the money without getting caught. I devised one, and I know that it would have worked. I'm pretty sure that it would have worked, because although it wasn't used in any kidnapping of a scion of the Murdoch Empire, you would have known that, of course, because I managed to convince the guys to go into the drug business. Relatively speaking, almost honourable. Well, I don't think many people agree, but there you have it. And it did test this method of moving valuables around, moving money around, without being detected, or putting a firewall in at least. I'm just about to play what I recorded at the same time as I posed the question. I'm going to play what the solution was back at that time. Now, bear in mind something which many people seem to forget, that there were no cryptocurrencies around at that time. So this plan to pick up the money safely relied on old-fashioned senses of timing and ideas and misdirection. You'll notice when I'm speaking about those days that I'm rather careful how I choose my words, and that's because when you're telling a story that actually happened with real people, some of whom are still alive, you have to choose your words quite carefully, because I don't want to get any of my friends in trouble, or their families. So it's the true story, but the words are chosen very carefully, so as not to reveal too much. But you'll get the plan all right, that's for sure. A few of you, well, only one, with 2 clicked likes, suggested that this was a very low-life enterprise. Well, it was part of the rich world, so I wouldn't call it low-life. But nonetheless, here's the conundrum. Unless you're part of something, you can't make any difference. Now, I persuaded my friends to abandon kidnapping and go into the drug business. Well, you might say, well, that's not much better. But there's quite a difference. Kidnapping, it's no deal at all. You're offering something back that somebody already has. There's no fair exchange. It's just extortion. It's something you wouldn't tolerate, and of course I wouldn't tolerate either. So it's never going to end well. I think there's a famous story of, was it mafia or was it Colombians? But in any event, I think it was Colombians. The kidnapped cousin of some Mr. Big out there. He was kidnapped, and the ransom was actually paid. But here's the thing. When the boy was returned, very publicly, the boss shot him. The Colombian boss paid the ransom all right, and he killed the boy. Pretty savage, really. But this was the message. The message was, this no longer matters. When you take something from me, it is soiled. I don't want it back, and I'm now going to spend a fortune hunting you down. And that's happened a few times. I must tell the Shining Path story. I think that was part of the kidnapping. Anyway, let's not get distracted. Now here's my original explanation. Let me explain. Now this was originally devised for collecting ransom money. So the assumption was that people would be watching every step of the way. But as it was used in the end, it was for business that generated a lot of cash, narcotics, and moving it from that cash into being of some use to somebody else and not traceable. I'll keep referring to it as ransom money because it makes it easier, even though it was used for a different purpose, but it was still moving it through so it couldn't be found. Some work was done months earlier to collect the ransom money. A couple of companies were started in Europe, and one of them was a trading company, and began buying and selling in small quantities diamonds from the Antwerp dealers. Now, you may know something about the diamond business. It's a very closed shop. There's a diamond exchange which has, I think at this stage, about 300 members, by invitation only, and very hard to become one of them, so tightly is the control of the diamond business. So some business was done with the diamond trade. Not huge amounts, but probably no more than about, I think, $50,000 worth of trade at any one time. Parcels usually around 10, 20, 30,000 or more doing the trades with the diamond dealers must have gone in on very good, or at least acceptable, false identity. That is a double layer false identity. One, a transparently fake name with a real company behind it to deal with the diamond dealers. They would expect that. But when they do their checks, they would find from the hotel records that there was a genuine passport behind it. So they would feel comfortable that they knew something of the person with whom they're trading. Of course, that second passport at the hotel would be a fake in a sense too, though legitimately issued. Now, I'm just talking about the stages here to establish the person who does the buying and selling of diamonds. That was necessary first. The next steps. The instructions for the ransom money were that the funds were to be paid in 4 transactions, coming to the $15 million, into one bank account. The bank account was established quite early on, but of course it had never had such large amounts through it. That kind of triggers various things within the banking system, but they certainly don't stop the money. They might stop it going back out again, but they'll let it in. Now, as it was in the original outline, the billionaire would have been told that the money had to be paid into the bank account. Now, what would he be thinking? He'd be thinking that, yes, well, the kidnappers must have a way to, I guess, transfer that money from bank account to bank account and, well, eventually to cash? No, too much money. There's just about nowhere you can put money in one day and within a short space of time take out cash the other end. Now, we were dealing in Lebanon, where the banks are pretty friendly. You can put a big wad of money in and then transfer it across the road by a kind of coupon system to another bank and another account. It puts a layer in there. But remember, in this kidnapping scenario, we don't want anybody to know what we're up to. We don't want the identities to come out, because after all, the billionaire's going to send in huge funds and very tough people who would lean on the banks, and they would spill. Oh, they wouldn't do it themselves. It's alien territory to them. But the rich people from outside would find somebody in Lebanon to do some pretty effective leaning on those bankers. No, that wouldn't do at all. But, of course, the money had to go into a bank account to start this system. And the bank accounts were not Lebanese. They're all European. I should say that this plot was before the 1996 Schengen Agreement in Europe, which effectively opened up the borders there. So it takes on a slightly different significance when I say that offices were rented in Luxembourg quite close to the Belgian border. The funds were transferred ultimately to an account whose offices were held in Luxembourg. They were rented there in a small street. The money went into that account and then transferred into another. Separately, the diamond merchants were alerted that within a week or two, a large parcel would be collected for a client, so they would be assembling some VVS2 D's and E coloured brilliant cuts between 1 and 2 carats to make up their amount, and that's quite small as a parcel to pack in the $15 million. But of course there's going to be losses involved in this. You can get diamonds, but when you sell them back, you're selling to the people you bought them from. There is almost no other way, unless you want to go into the retail world or very slowly get rid of them. I'm sure people could do that. I've found people in that situation. Unfortunately, for knowledge's sake, all the major Nazis who had diamonds to sell were dead by the time I got around to being in business, so I can tell you nothing of them. Though there would have been some interesting conversations from the rats. So, the diamonds were bought with the 15 million. It was arranged that they be picked up. Now, just to make the diamond dealers less nervous, they were told that this parcel of diamonds would be inspected on Tuesday, but not picked up till Wednesday. The money got transferred on a Monday, then transferred to the other account, and then paid into the diamond merchant's account on Tuesday morning. It was ready there. So if they had any fears that something iffy was going on, they were put aside by the relaxed nature of, well, we're in no hurry for our diamonds, we'll pick them up in a day or two. And sure enough, they got their money, so why should they care? When the diamonds were picked up, they offered security, and that was in fact availed. That is, we let the diamond merchant security take them at least to the border with Luxembourg. Were there any people following us? Well, if it had been the kidnapping money, there would have been. But we were ever alert to any other surveillance. But nonetheless, I don't think so. But let's say it was the kidnapping money, and they followed back to the office where the diamonds went to. How would they know to be there? They could only know by following the money trail and watching it being transferred into the diamond dealers. Now, would they contact them or not? Perhaps, but they wouldn't contact them straight away. They would stay with anybody dealing with that account or anybody on a computer dealing with that account. But there would be just enough time, 24 hours, to arrange for them to follow those stones as they were handed over to our man, and he took them to the office over the border in Luxembourg. In Luxembourg City, the office was a little unusual. When the man with the diamonds came in, he stayed, had a brief coffee, picked up his bag, walked out with a fresh envelope in his hands, and got into a taxi, and then went into a hotel in town with the bag. What was going on? Well, to any observer, it would have meant that he went to that office to get further instructions, but that's not what happened. When those offices were rented, they were rented with the availability right behind, in the street behind, another set of rooms. It was not ideal. It wasn't a warehouse. It was a small eyeglasses polishing outfit. But nonetheless, we eventually got control of it and put a doorway through to the two offices. Of course, their front doors in different streets, so that when the diamonds came in, under the table the bag was switched, they were taken out into the back office, which was not visible from the street, the secret door opened,
and a man steps through, and I almost said her name. She picked up the diamonds and then went out of the eyeglass polishing business front door. So any watchers would have missed that transaction. The money, the ransom money, would have been paid into the accounts and then, well, pretty much disappeared. If they were very good, they could have had people, they would have caught up with the diamond dealers. Yes, they're thinking diamonds are going to be bought, but who gets those? And they would have followed the pickup man. How many of them are there? Well, was there enough to keep following the pickup man from the offices and go to his hotel, yet somebody else to stay back and watch the place where he dropped in to get his instructions? We're already up to 3 sets of watchers at this stage. Then, where to go next? Well, in this ransom collection, in a sense, it doesn't matter. We have the diamonds. They've gone through with the girl through the secret door at the back. They're out. They're in our hands. They can be dealt with at leisure. Sure, there'd be losses in, if you took $15 million worth of diamonds, you'd probably be battling to sell them back for more than 12 in any reasonable length of time, though you could turn a profit if you were in no hurry. As for the kidnap watchers, the thugs hired by our billionaire friend, well, they would catch up with the man in the hotel room that had visited there. Now, here's the difference. In the original plan for the kidnap pickup, some things were done at the hotel to make that our bagman, not theirs, disappear. Because if he fell into their hands, they would do terrible things to him, and he would say everything he knew. But in the actual testing of this scheme, it was drug money. And that was not where you see vicious underground people. Well, come to think of it, you do, but you certainly don't see the authorities acting in that way, usually. So that our bagman didn't have to be protected in the same way. But I hope you get the idea. Just to sum up, in high-profile ransom collection, there has to be several layers and barriers. There also has to be, as there was, some point when the people following, the police or the hired detectives, think they know what's going on. But in this case, they miss the transaction where the diamonds are bought, moved on, swept through a double building with a rear exit, and then disappear. Now, how did that compare with your ideas? I'll just check to see what you said.
I won't read through all of these answers, there's quite a fistful here, but read enough so you get the idea. Now, Mike, I think I correspond with him. I think I've signed a book for him. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, Mike came up with a few ideas, and here's one of them. He said, I won't read it all out, but playing as many angles as possible, setting up the kidnapped person, Lachlan in this case, to be rescued in some kind of fake rescue and taken all over Europe and leak intel to rival factions. I'm not quite sure what that means. I don't think you'd want to have anything to do with rival factions in that. This leak will put another manipulated player on the board to draw attention. Blame somebody else. Well, that does rather identify yourself, usually does. But here's the point of Mike's plan here. What he wanted to do was somehow make our gang look like the rescuers and gain the eternal gratitude of Lachlan, and that would make him virtually an ally of us. I don't really think so. Of course, there's the famous Stockholm syndrome, where the people who are the captives come to identify with their captors. It can happen. It happened to Patty Hearst. I think she was Yes, that's right. She was in the family of rich newspaper people, Randall Hearst. And she ended up robbing a bank for, what was it called, the Symbionese Liberation Army. And they had a lot of interesting counterculture revolutionary groups in the 60s. You don't see them much anymore. They've pretty much all been killed. And it wouldn't last 5 seconds these days, but maybe we do have them in a perverse kind of way. Mike had another idea to be paid the ransom in luxury cars. Well, I suppose if Jay Leno's garage of luxury cars is worth 50 million, that would be quite a lot in terms of value. But when it comes to traceable assets, I think a luxury car would be pretty easy to spot. So, Mike, I think you abandoned that idea. But interesting thought to go down the line of find alternatives. And of course, mine with the diamonds, but the diamonds coming from a different source that we buy, is of course an alternative. There aren't many other things. Dave said, Dave Spooney this is, I've pondered on this subject for over an hour now, and I cannot think of a viable switch. Other that holes can't be picked out. He goes on about how difficult things are, and pretty much says, well, this is just a motorcycle rider, but that's still something that can be followed. And he's quite ruthless, old Dave Spooney here. In one of his plans, there's a switch involving train toilets, and the two bike riders will need to be met at the station, and both will be shot dead. Dave, we're not those kind of people. Anyway, he pretty much ends with, gone are the days of robbing anything legitimate. He does suggest robbing drug dealers would be easier. Well, you know the cash is there, but you also know that they'll be quite unscrupulous when they seek their vengeance. So I don't think that one wins a prize. Okay, Saucy Sandwich. I know him actually. He's from the US. Well, Mr. Sandwich suggests having the money run around city blocks, and then it goes into a water drain. Well, then it ends up being plucked out from another part of the drain and thrown into a refrigerated truck. The idea that the thick walls will block any tracking. Well, SS, I don't think your heart was really in that one, but I signed the book for you, so maybe you'll get a different idea. I don't think kidnapping's for you. Don't think it's for many people really, but we still haven't quite found a winner yet. Jack Vernian comes up with such a complex plan, even though he perhaps has a change of heart, but he starts so enthusiastically. I've just got to read a little of it. It goes on for some time. My initial idea, lure your hostage into an area which is adjacent to Russia, alternatively China. Big territory and big language barrier are a must. Yes, Jack, there's nothing like not being able to speak to each other. He suggests Kazakhstan, Belarus, Ukraine, Mongolia, you name it, he says. Once there, I'm not quite sure how Lachlan Murdoch is going into that kind of territory. Maybe he's chasing a girl. I don't know. Anyway, smuggle him into Russia. It shouldn't pose a problem, says Jack. The old Soviet bloc countries are full of holes. Anyway, and he says to get locals to help out here. I'm not sure, Jack, that we really want to be trusting Russian native speakers if we don't speak it ourselves. And even if we do, I don't think that would help. I somehow think they might have ideas of their own. But he goes on. Better keep changing location so the locals don't get too suspicious. Needless to say, people doing this have to be native Russian speakers, as I said, or they'll be sticking out like a sore thumb. Yes. This is not a foolproof plan, really, and you need to be really fast about it, although it does buy you time, as intelligence services are combing through Soviet bloc countries. Pessimistically, I think it should give you a week or so. Well, put a very strict time limit on the payment of the ransom and make sure you're serious about it, insists Jack. Film a video where you make your hostage bleed. Jack, the knives are out already. Or maybe fake blood. That'd be better. Make them believe that time is against them. Set a deadline point, beyond which you abandon the... Oh, he spelt that. Kidnapping attempt. We like to have a kidnapping, don't we, Jack? It's much better than a kidnapping. Every hour, a noose is tying tighter around your neck. Make sure, as the attempt comes to an end, you release the hostage somewhere which is very, very far from his previous hiding place. Yeah, sure. Ideally, release him where you kidnapped him. Otherwise, you'll be leaving footprints for them to find. Jack, I think there's some worse things going on with this. But let's keep going. Oh, wait a minute. He's had an idea here. What we're demanding, according to Jack, is germanium, rhodium, palladium, platinum, copper. Copper? Well, if the demand was in gold at, say, 1996 prices, that would be, well, over a metric ton, which, so for the ransom to be paid in gold, you wouldn't want to be loading gold into bags and jumping into sewers, or even dragging it about anywhere. And as for $15 million in copper, Jack. Anyway, he comes up with Bitcoin. But the strategy is one huge con. His plans gets very complicated. But he does add, if they don't believe you, you're screwed and might as well finish early. This plan is far from perfect, says Jack. And it's not good for small-time ransoms. No. I like Jack. He's thinking aloud, definitely, in this one. But he does kind of make a false assumption about trading in metals. You don't actually take the metal. People trade all the time in precious metals, but they don't actually get the gold or the platinum. No, they trade the ownership of it and the price that it is. I remember buying gold once, and when I told the bullion dealer that I actually wanted it in gold bars, he looked kind of shocked. Of course, he came up with it. It wasn't some huge amount, but that was the rarity. Even buying that was quite difficult. Now, it does remind me of a money laundering operation, which it was quite good. I liked the idea, but a little money went into it. To clean up the money was buying shares in an African gold mine, and gold was to be bought actually as bullion and then mixed in with a bunch of local gravel and then sent to a legitimate refinery. So the idea was that you buy this crappy African gold mine, which is mostly old tailings, and you strike it lucky. And so the money you have in your Swiss bank account was paid for by a check from the refining company. It was not a bad idea, but it meant putting an awful lot of money into melting down that gold and making sure the mix matched the local area gold. Still, let's not get sidetracked. In case you've just tuned in, this is David McMillan here, former smuggler, and I'm reviewing the suggestions that people have put in the comment section about how to collect a ransom in a very high-profile kidnapping. The difficulties are well known, being tailed, followed, traceable things being handed over, and some interesting ideas being put forward. Let's go to Jan Smith. And this is not the only person who have a fondness for throwing things in rivers. In fact, throwing things into the back of trucks, throwing things into river, out of windows, into cars. A lot of things get thrown. I don't know why you just can't open the back of the car and put it in. But anyway, Jan's idea is to find a fairly large river, tie the money to an old log marked with something brighter. I guess that's, you can see it. Yes, I'll collect it downstream, say 20 odd miles. But he advises it would need watching as it made its way. Obviously more planning needs thought out, whether using a boat or how to track. I'm not sure, Jan, whether that log would make it 20 miles without getting snagged. And certainly there would be a lot of people watching that. But let's see who else wants to throw the money somewhere. One of the responses I liked best was from Jeff. And he says, "Here's my answer, David. I'm not telling you anything about my plan, my friend that I don't know or trust. Have a nice day." So, Jeff has decided he's got a plan, but he's wise enough not to tell anybody. And he wasn't the only one to do that. I think Legal Tyranny suggested yes, he did. He said that he had some ideas, but they were pretty damn good, and he wasn't going to spread them around town. But he did add that he didn't have any plans of using it. But, Mr. Tyranny, you never know when you might need a good plan, huh? Better to follow my earlier video's advice and don't speak. One of the ideas from GK was to stage an unexpected incident of some kind, starting with, "I just had an idea that has high risk, but it's an idea nevertheless." He goes on about the US drug and smuggling networks, but oh yes, his idea is the money's paid over somewhere, or it's en route to be delivered, and we stage a traffic accident or some incident that brings the police along. And of course they're not real police, it's us in disguise, and during some kind of a mess, we take the money and go. I don't think that would really solve any of the problems, assuming that there's somebody following behind for this money drop and the delivery. The fact that there was an accident and there were police involved, that would really just give them time to get a better and closer look. And they'd certainly know that that money had just changed hands. It's not small. There's quite a few bags in there. And they would pretty much know you've got the same problem. You've got to get away from the people watching. Matty Hollywood says, strap a live bomb to Rupert Murdoch and send him out to retrieve the money. I think in this plan, the money is, I don't know, left on the highway or on the desert or in the Paris metro, and wearing a bomb, Rupert goes out to get it. I don't know quite what happens next. What's the advantage you've got? And I do think it would kind of attract attention, somebody wandering around with a bomb attached to him. A little more thought there, Mr. Hollywood. Yeah. Oh yes, that's the reminder from Legal Tyranny that he's got ideas, but he knows when to speak and when not to. Good on him. Now this one here that's so spectacular. I'll come back to that. Let's put it aside. Alex Bremner. Alex has the idea to, well, build a cellar and put the young man, the kidnap victim, in there and work out in advance how long he can stay alive in breathing the available oxygen. A very hard calculation to make. And oddly enough, it's not the only person who's suggested burying somebody in a cellar. I can't really see the point of that. Um, what's that going to do? Just alarm everybody? You're trying to keep this as a business transaction, a ruthless and rotten one. But anyway, but see, Alex says you've already tapped into your dark side, but he certainly has. You take a photo of him with the day's paper, send it to the father with a personal item of jewellery or clothing. And he doesn't want so much money in his plan. He wants about 1.3 million in Krugerrands. That's gold, of course, which is about 30 kilos. I don't think $1 million? That's not going to do anybody any good. I think if you win $1 million in the lottery, you think, great, but that'll last me a year. Certainly can't buy a house in London with it. Anyway, it does seem there's a bit of digging in that. And he then goes on to make a mess of it. But he's given it quite a bit of thought. But there's some swaps and road tunnels and a bike. You get back to your hideout and then seemingly take it forever to get rid of it. It's actually, I'm being a little sarcastic, but he has given it some thought. So, it wouldn't work, but there was something involving motorcycles in this. And it does bring to mind something that's probably worth mentioning in this. Had a situation some years ago where a courier was given a set of instructions, and he was the kind of courier that could follow those instructions. There are not many. Mostly, if there's a plan for what you do if you're arrested at an airport coming in, the plan is always the same. You're working for somebody who, of course, can't be identified, and you picked it up from somebody. Again, the details are hazy. It doesn't matter what you say. You're going down for it anyway. What my job would be to make sure that they didn't serve any time, or at least were given the option of decent escape or loads of money. Anyway, there was just once when a plan was used, and it worked pretty well. The courier, as I say, it wasn't a run-of-the-mill courier. It was intercepted, and back in those days, they always liked to, they really wanted to catch the people who were going to pick it up, and they knew they had a limited time. Let's imagine you're the courier. You arrive, you land. It's been discovered. A couple of hours has gone past, but you tell them, that is the police, the authorities, that at 5 o'clock that afternoon, you're supposed to meet somebody at a particular cafe in town, and there the suitcase is to be handed over, and you'll get paid. So they'd like to be there for that. Now, they wouldn't do it this way these days, but they did at that time because they really didn't want to interfere with where the stuff was. They didn't smash it to pieces. They took some away, but they resealed the casing that it was in, and they sent him on his way. He followed the plan and the route that took him into town. It took him up a hill which was always packed with traffic. You had no choice. It was handbrake starts inching along. I've just realized I can't really go too much further with this story because it's starting to identify people. But put it this way, if you know the city's roads, how they're laid out and the traffic conditions, it is possible to intercept a car, take something or a person from it, and then drive away on a motorcycle. In that case, they were stuck in traffic. There was only two of them, with the police at the other end had been phoned and were waiting, but the car with the person in it that had to be saved was just there on that stuck in traffic bit. The motorcycle rider came down, opened the door, pulled him out, put him on the bike, and then drove off. But it only worked because the whole layout was very well known. And where the motorcycle rider went was down a dead-end street, but it had a block of apartments with a driveway into it for parking, and at the back of that, a small lane, a pedestrian lane, but wide enough for a bike. That kind of thing can be done, but it needs extraordinarily good communications and should really only be used as part of something else. So it shouldn't be dismissed altogether, but it's risky, that kind of stuff, driving around doing swaps. Sean Quinlan came up with an idea, but I don't think it goes very far. His was to do a ransom exchange near an airport, in an airport lounge, and once the switch is made, he just jumps on the plane, but they don't know which plane he's getting on, so they're lost. Well, it wouldn't take them too much to know which plane, and I don't think you can take $15 million onto a plane without having questions asked. Besides, once you're on the plane, they'll know which one, and they'll have people waiting the other end. And here's the point. When the courier of the money arrives at the other end, one thing he's certainly going to do would be to phone his boss. That's us, the kidnappers. And that call would be monitored. So it would be a direct line to arrest. Sorry about that one. Okay, Samboy 666 has a straightforward idea. Diamonds, emeralds, rubies. Again, the other problem with them. And, okay, he wants to use a drone. Man, there's a trouble with the drone, Sam. Even today, the maximum range of direct control drones is no more than about 5 miles. And in 96, it would have had to be custom built, but it would have suffered from the same problem. You couldn't stay in radio control of it. And I think a drone would be noisy and stand out. Very rarely been used with any success. I think the Palestinians used it, crossing out of the Gaza Strip for a few little things. Mostly for tramadol. They had a big tramadol problem. Wow. Now, I've saved this one for last. It's from Bruce Kears. Does he? And he goes on and he ends up burying poor old victim too. But his plan wouldn't work, but it's worth listening to. He says, I would have scoped my mark and know his banks and financials. How, Bruce? Anyway, come time for the drop, I would run the bagman as usual through a series of red herring attempts to lose the tail. Well, why, if you're not going to seriously lose the tail? Anyway, just a bigger chance of something going wrong. And he would eventually end up in a secluded cabin or a warehouse, where he would find a large iron wood stove blazing with fire. He's building quite a picture here, old Brucey. Yes. Oh, yes, there's a table in there, in this secluded place, with a cell phone and a laptop. The room would be wired for sound and visuals. I, says Bruce, am hundreds, if not thousands of miles away, but have minions not aware of the full plan doing the minor setup, starting the fire in the cabin. Yes, I can see, Bruce, you telling a minion to, well, your job, Frank, is to go to the cabin and get that fire going. We don't want it cold. And, by the way, I'm going to kill you later. Why would I say that? He starts to get a bit nasty here. My voice over the speaker would instruct him to toss his cell phone into the stove. This is the bagman, to throw his mobile phone into the stove. Oh, yes, and throw the money into the fire. Right, and call the mark and tell him that he's got to call Murdoch and say, well, Mr. Murdoch, I was instructed to throw the $15 million into the fire, and I've just done so. And there's something about a proof of life photo. And poor old Murdoch Jr., he is buried alive in a 6x6 box with the air gauge running out tick-tock, says Bruce. I don't know quite what's this necessity to bury people in boxes. I'm starting to detect a rather perverse streak in the nature of some of my correspondence here. Yeah. Oh, there's something he's got to do. Murdoch here has got to pay another $15 million. So he's got to open up that laptop and type in codes and transfer to Bruce's holding account, and then he splits it up into lesser amounts and run those around the world, and where, with the assistance of a crooked banker in the Maldives or wherever, I would cash out and employ my exit strategy. Oh yes, since, of course, I'm not a murderer, I would text the GPS coordinates just enough time to arrive, dig down 5 feet. This is to dig the poor boy out of his 6x6 box, which is 5 feet underground, and a shovel was provided. I don't know, Bruce, if you can actually factor in the time that somebody's suffocating with the time that it takes to use your provided shovel to dig him back out again. And it's quite a job, I would imagine. He says, though, if my scenario is not the winner, perhaps you could at least ennoble me with the title proper villain, or at least nasty piece of work. I suppose dodgy Yank would suffice. Well, not dodgy Yank, but you certainly win a book for that one. It's got all the elements of pointless running around, and for rank weirdness, the idea of burning the 15 million, I still quite can't work out why that was done. And then expecting the bagman to operate a laptop to do transfers from accounts that they're not even set up to have money in. What is that part of the research? You already know Murdoch's got 15 million in some account that the bagman didn't type in coordinates to. Anyway, I tell you what, there's such enthusiasm and such confidence that a crooked banker will not steal from you. And it goes with the flow of those others that thought it's a good idea to operate in territories where you don't speak the language, and trusting people like those Russians who would simply eat everybody on the spot, eat any money that came in. They wouldn't care about anything, especially you. But nonetheless, the enthusiasm of that one, definitely. Bruce Carey's, send me a message at davidmcmillan.net on that click that says you want a signed book, and you'll get one from me for that. Not the extra special prize. I'm afraid nobody really got that one. But then again, I guess it's not really our thing, is it? Well, certainly not quite. But you all gave it some thought. You little villains, you. Well, there you have it. Oh, yes, I couldn't resist a quick smoke. You always know who the villain is in a movie when he's smoking. Not many brilliant ideas, but certainly quite a bit of enthusiasm there, and that deserves praise. Now, I have an idea for doing a little discussion on losing yourself, changing your identity, and there are quite a few things worth knowing about that. But in fact, I'm going to do something different next up. I'll tell you about it in a minute.
Yes, I keep in touch with things a bit for future writing, but bear in mind if you want to disappear from the grid, old things don't necessarily work. Just to alert you, if you are thinking of using, as I did, birth certificates from kids or stillborn infants, people who've died young and couldn't possibly have had a passport, think again. There has been in the last few years a match between the birth certificate records and the death certificate records. I had a friend who used to run around on a genuinely issued but duplicate passport for many, many years, and the name on it matched somebody who died of, I don't know, cot death, and so of course they had no records. But despite using it for many years, he returned back from Dubai 18 months ago and was stopped, and they knew it was a wrong passport. So a lot of the old stuff has changed in the disappearing game. Yeah, sure, I don't mean just disappearing by throwing your phones away and keeping away like some woodsman outback paranoid who won't touch anything electronic. You don't want to live like that. You want to have a real life, but just be able to do it in secret and to leave your own one behind you. Yes, that will be the subject of the next, what will I call them? Little thinking aloud. Joined by my friends out there. See you then.
Now, despite what I said, I'll put that changing your identity, walking out of your life and becoming somebody else, I'll change the order of that and do that the one after the next. And the next one will be about, well, it's really the question, can you be a career criminal? Can you be part of the underworld as a choice of life and still maintain a good marriage, still have a close and good relationship? Is it fair? Is there any point? Does it work? Well, I've had some experience, 3 major examples in my life, and I'll give you those, and we'll see how they worked out. Not well, mostly. Well, not until now, of course. I'll see you then.